Have you ever tried to copy texture or edit texture and you've come across problems because the underlying color is not right? Well, there is a method which is called frequency of separation, where you can separate the texture from the underlying color and edit it accordingly. Frequency of separation is an image editing technique that is used by professionals to retouch images. Frequency of separation is easy to use. It basically involves two layers. The first layer is called the low frequency layer, which contains colors and shades, and the other is a high frequency layer which contains all the details. For example, in the case of an image of a person, it would include the details like the pores, the skin, the wrinkles, etc. And the underlying layer, the low frequency layer, would be the color of the skin or different areas or different colors of patches of color on the skin. So you may want to use this technique to blend various areas of color, or you may want to copy areas of texture, and this technique is very useful for that. The links to these images are available in the description of this video. So let's get started working with the image. So we're going to begin working with this image, and to use frequency of separation, what you have to do is create two additional layers. One layer is called the low frequency layer and the other is called the high frequency layer. So in the low frequency layer, we will have only shades of color which will be blended together. And in the high frequency layer, we will have only texture, which we will see how to manipulate in order to get a smooth skin effect. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, the background layer. So you press Command J or Control J, or you can simply use right click and use duplicate layer, and we're going to call it low frequency. Okay. And similarly, we are going to make sure you duplicate the background again, and this time we call it high frequency. So we have two duplicate layers of the background. One is called low frequency, the other is called high frequency. The high frequency layer, the texture is always above the color, so we must drag the high frequency layer above the low frequency layer. We're going to begin working with the low frequency layer, so I'm going to put the high frequency layer off by clicking on the visibility icon here. So click on the low frequency layer and go to filter and choose noise and choose median. Okay. Now I'm going to bring this radius to 0, and you can see there's no effect. So once I bring it up slowly, you will see that as we move ahead, it keeps blurring the image, and we don't want to blur it so much. We want to blur it to a point where we can see the eye, the nose, the lips, etc., as well as the shades are also blended together well. So this is a little bit too much, so I'm going to type in here 20, which is good enough for this image. So it will vary, this setting will vary depending on the size and resolution of the image that you're actually using. So click OK for the moment. So what we've done now is, if you look at the background and you look at the low frequency area, you will see that the shades are blended, and we can work with this going forward. So now highlight the high frequency layer. Now in the high frequency layer, you go to image and choose apply image. So what we're going to do here is select the layer from here as a low frequency. Mind you, it should not be merged. Okay, it should be the low frequency layer that we just created, and the blending mode should be subtract. Okay, not add but subtract. The scale should be 2 and the offset should be 128. The rest of them should be unchecked, and these settings apply to 8-bit images. How will you know whether it's an 8-bit images? If you look at the name of your image here on top, it says RGB 8. That means the image mode is RGB and the bit depth is 8 bits. So for 8 bits, these are the settings. I am posting alongside here the settings for 16-bit images. So click OK. And once you've done that, you change the blend mode here of this of this layer to linear light. So after doing this, it would seems like nothing happened. Okay, if I press Option and Alt and click on the background layer, it will put everything else off, and you see that there is no change. If I put everything on and off, there's no change, because each of these low and high frequency layers cancel out each other and you get the same image basically. So for us it is useful because we can work with the color separately and we can work with the texture separately. So if I press Option and click on this high frequency layer, this is what it contains, just the texture, or what you call the sharpening detail. And the next thing, and if I press only on the low frequency layer, then you will see that there's only the blending options for the blending of the colors here. Okay. So I'm going to put all the layers on again. So what we want to do now is basically work with all this that you see here, all these freckles and all these patches, and we want to get rid of also this additional color or this dark area on the skin. Mind you, we want to keep this area dark because it's defining the face, so we don't want to lose the structure or the definition of the face. Okay? Whereas we would like to work with or lighten up these areas of the image. So I'm going to now work only with colors. So if you want to work only with colors, you have to go to the low frequency layer. You have to put the top layer off, that is the high frequency layer, so that we can see what we are working with. Now on this low frequency layer, what you're going to do is you choose the mixer brush, okay, and from the presets here we are going to choose wet. So this will give us the settings that we need to work with this layer. Now sample all layers is off. Okay, I'm going to keep it off. It should not be on. Okay, and because we want to work only with this layer. Now the color that we want to use is a light color, like somewhere here, or this color. Okay, so what I'm going to do is press the Option or Alt key and click on that, so that Photoshop selects that color. If you want a lighter color, you can choose a lighter color from here and it will select that color for you. Okay, so if you press the left bracket key and the right bracket key, you will be able to adjust the size of your brush. So the black circle there is the size of my brush. So I'm going to take a sample from there. That is the color sample that I'm going to use. And I'm going to start dragging the brush from the light area to the dark area in order to blend it. So on this layer, we are going to blend the color. So we are going to select a color from the lighter area. So I'm going to make my brush small and I'm going to press Option or Alt and click with this brush, mixer brush, on the area that or the color that I want to use for the image. So I'm going to use this light color from here. I'm going to make the brush a little bigger. Okay, you see the black part, that's my brush, and I am going to paint on that. Okay, so since the brush is small, it's not blending well, so I'm going to undo. I'm going to use a bigger brush and I'm going to blend that area. Okay, now the eye, you have to be a little careful there, because yes, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to come down here and paint this area like that. Okay, notice how I'm stroking it. Okay, I'm stroking it in the contours of the face. Okay, I've kept that dark line there because that defines the face there. So this is what my layer looks like now, nice and smooth. All those color patches have gone. Okay, now mind you, this is not retouching per se professionally. We are just learning how to use this tool in order to get what we want. So when I put the high frequency layer on again, you will see that this is the background layer before and after. Notice we've been able to correct the color and leave the texture as it is. Okay. So now that we've got this, let's go and work with the texture itself. Okay. So to work on the texture, you have to go to the high frequency layer, and we are going to use the clone tool because we're going to copy textures from various places to other areas in the image. In order to do that, we need the clone stamp tool. So make sure you've chosen the clone stamp tool, and I suggest you go to the clone stamp tool up here and choose the gear icon and choose reset tool. The reason being that you will have the same settings that I have right now on my screen. So make sure current layer is selected from the sample, and if you want you can use align, but I'm going to put aligned off. And what happens with this now here is that make sure that your opacity and flow is 100%. So we're going to take areas of texture which are clean and clear and put them onto other areas. Okay. So how do we do that? We simply go to the area that we want to copy. Okay, so I'm going to make my brush big enough. I'm using the clone stamp tool. I'm going to sample the texture from this area here. I'm going to point there and press Alt or Option on the keyboard and click once. So I've sampled that area. Now I can simply go to whichever area I want to paint, okay, and paint. So what will happen now is that it will copy that texture from there. Okay, notice that I'm clicking and I'm painting in short strokes because this area is small where we are copying from. Okay. So now we are able to copy the texture. Notice the underlying color is as is. So we're going to copy this texture down here like this. Okay. And if you want to keep the highlight, you can. Otherwise, you can simply reduce the flow, okay, to something like 20 or something like that. And then paint over the area. So it's gone. Okay. So I have completely removed the texture from the nose, or rather those freckles and stuff like that. So if you want now, you can take this texture and put it on the nose. How do we do that? So now I'm going to use full flow and I'm going to use a lower opacity. So I'm going to use an opacity of maybe 15%. Okay. I'm going to option click here, and now I'm going to paint on the nose area. Okay, I've not left the mouse button, I've kept it pressed. That is because I'm using 15%. So if I go over it again, now it will become 15 plus 15, that is 30%. So now I've got the clean texture on the nose there. Okay, so we've cleared up that. If you want even more texture, you can keep painting over it, and it will take that texture from the side and put it on the nose. So we're going to do the same thing here below. Okay, so we're going to come here, make sure the brush is small, and go to the clear area, and we're going to use a full opacity, full flow, and we're going to paint those areas so that the skin gets smoothed out. So all these extra freckles or marks will disappear. So be careful, make sure that you do it right. Okay. Okay, if you want to keep part of the effect, then you reduce the flow. Okay, so notice now we have managed to get the texture removed. Okay, and it's looking nice and clean. So this is before and this is after what we've currently just managed to do. Now, if you still want this texture of the skin to come onto the nose as well, or the side also, we do the same thing. Okay, this time I'm going to use a lower flow, like 25%. Okay, I'm going to zoom into this area. I'm going to use the clone stamp tool. I'm still on the high frequency layer. So I'm going to try to get this texture onto the skin as well here. So I want it to blend nicely. So I'm going to press Option and click here. And I'm just going to dab it there like that. Okay. And between these two, I'm going to do it one more time so that there's a graduation of texture between that. Notice my flow is 25, around 25%. Okay. So the same way, I can also get the texture on the nose there. Okay. And if you take a look, we've lost some shading there for that, and we could also get it back if we wanted to. Okay, so let's say I made a mistake and I wanted that highlight there and I want to get it back. So what you can do is you can recreate the high frequency layer. So what you have to do is take the background layer, make a duplicate, put it on top of the low frequency layer. So I'm going to call this layer high frequency 2, and we'll do the same thing. Image, apply image, low frequency 228, subtract. Okay, now what I've got is a new copy, high frequency 2, and I'm going to drag it right above. So now you change the blend mode for that again to linear light, and now you're back at your original image. Okay. But we're not going to use this second layer, we're going to use the first one because that's where we have this detail. Now from this top layer, we only want to get that highlight. Okay, so how do we do that? So you select the top layer and put a mask on it. Okay, now once you have a mask on it, you double click on the mask and you choose invert. So what happens is, even though the layer is there, because of the black mask, nothing is being shown there. Okay? So now what we do is click on that black mask, change my brush to normal brush. Okay, I'll change the size of the brush by using the bracket key, and using white and using a low flow, like maybe 10-15, something like that. Okay, I'm going to paint in this area. Okay, so what has happened now is I've managed to bring back that highlight which was lost. See, this highlight was lost in the editing. Okay, and you can go in and fine tune the areas which are not required. So change over to black and paint over the areas that are not required, like that. So now when you look at it, you see we've got back the highlight on the skin and the skin is smooth. So this is before, this is after. If you want more of that highlight, simply go to white on your brush, make sure the flow is low and paint over it. As you keep painting over it, it will get darker. Alright. So now I'm going to keep that top layer as it is, or for the moment I'm just going to put it off, and we are going to work with the high frequency layer that we created earlier. Alright. Now we've got a decent picture here. Of course, like I said, this is not retouching basically, but we are trying to learn how to use frequency of separation in order to get things done. We can further go now and work with the eye in the same way. You see there's a red patch here in the eye. which we want to get rid of. So how to do that? Remember, when you're dealing with color, it has to always be on the low frequency layer. So I'm going to put the high frequency layer off. Okay. So by putting it off now, I cannot see that full eye clearly. So I'm going to keep the high frequency layer on, but I'm going to work on the low frequency layer. So I'm going to click on the low frequency layer. I'm going to use the mixer brush. Okay, I'm going to make it small, that much. Okay, a little bigger maybe. And I'm going to sample this color of the eye, the white of the eye. So I'm going to press Option Alt and click on this layer. On this, so I'm going to press Option Alt and click on this color. So that is the color that has been chosen now. And I'm going to make sure my flow is 100%. Okay. And I'm working on that layer only, not all layers. And I'm going to simply paint over that area. So as I keep painting with the color I had chosen from the white of the eye, notice now the texture is still there, but it has removed the redness in the eye there quite a bit. So we could do the same thing here as well. We could manipulate that. So now my picture looks something like this. Okay, so this is before and this is after. Okay, so we have cleaned up the skin and we have also cleaned up the eye. Okay, now just like we recovered that highlight, if I put this top layer on, you can see the highlight appears. And if you notice now that the hair here is kind of not looking clear. So what we'll do is go to the top layer which contains the original texture, go to the mask of that layer, go to a normal brush tool, select white and select 100% flow and 100% opacity. Now using a very tiny brush, okay, I'm going to paint so that it brings back those strands of hair. I'm going to make the brush very, very fine. And now we can paint in those areas that we need back from the original texture. Okay, so here we are. And let's make it a little bigger so we can work faster. There you are. So now we've got back the eyelashes as well. Okay, so this is the original high frequency layer which we did not change. We're just using part of it with the mask. See, this is our mask. So whatever we paint in white will be used in the picture here. Okay, so this is how now you see how we have managed to separate the texture from the color and use it accordingly. Now this method can be used with anything, any other kind of picture. Let's take another image. So this is an AI image of a wildlife kind of image using AI, and I want now to manipulate this image so that these feathers get extended here as well. So remember, we need color and we need texture, right? So let's go through the process. We need to create two layers. Okay, this is low, this is high. So to get new layers is Command Control J. Put the top layer off, select this bottom layer, that is the low frequency layer, and go to filter and select noise, median. Okay, and we are going to blur the areas so that we can get a steady color. Okay, And now you select the top layer, apply image, and make sure you choose the low frequency layer. Select subtract to 128, click OK, and then choose linear light. So it comes back to normal. Now what we want to do is copy this area of color here. So I'm going to use the mixer brush. Make sure you have wet selected in the presets. Sample all layers is off. I'm going to use the brush, mixer brush, and I'm going to sample this color. So I'm going to choose this deeper color because it's in shadow. So I'm going to choose maybe a darker shade from here. And I'm going to now paint this area. Okay. Because I want the feathers to come there. So I'm painting that area. So this is before, okay, and now after. Now I go to the high frequency layer and put it on. Okay. Notice now that these feathers have not come, but the color has come there. So we're going to copy this texture here. Okay, so these feathers here. So I'm going to choose the clone stamp tool. Okay, I'm going to make sure the flow and opacity is 100%. I'm working on the current layer, and I'm going to start here. So Alt Option and click here to sample this area, and then go here and paint. Okay, so now I've successfully transferred this texture here as well. So it seems like an extension of the feathers. Okay, so this is before and after. Okay, you can see it's done seamlessly, and no one will be able to tell what the difference is. Alright, so this was a wildlife image, and let's take another image as well. Okay, so this is maybe a product photo or something like that, and maybe now we'll do something slightly different. Okay, let's make the layers again. Okay, low, high. Put the high off, go to the low, go to filter, noise, median. Okay, and we're just going to blur it to some point, let's say till there, and go to high frequency, apply image, make sure you've chosen the low frequency layer to 128, subtract, okay, and choose linear light. Now let's say, for the sake of using this method, we want to use these bubbles which are inside the glass outside as texture. Okay, but we don't want it small, we want it big. Now you choose the clone stamp tool and then go to the clone source panel. If you don't find it there, go to Windows and choose clone source. You will get this panel coming up, and we want to change the size of our source to 300%. Make it big, okay, and make sure both horizontal and vertical height and width are both the same. So you need to make sure this chain is on here, this link is on. Okay, now I'm going to sample from here. So I'm going to option click here. Okay, I am on the high frequency layer. I'm going to option click here. That's where I want to take the sample from. And now as I keep painting, you see, I can create that texture here as well. Okay, now if you don't want it so much, you can reduce the flow maybe to 20-25% and then paint again. So this time you will get this texture coming up here. You can just dab like this. Okay. For example, if you do not want that, press undo. And if you do not want that texture, you could even copy the bokeh. So you option click here, and now you'll get bigger bokeh, 3 times as big. So when you paint, now you see, this is so good to do. I mean, if you want it smaller, you can choose 200% and paint. So you could duplicate anything. So this is how you can take texture and copy it across anywhere. Any image, anything can be done. Okay, let's take one more example. Let's take a landscape image. Okay, and in this image we want to extend this waterfall to the side. Okay, so let's do the same thing. Okay, we call this low. This one high. Select the low frequency layer, put the high one off, and go to noise, median, and we'll blur it sufficiently. That much is fine. Go to the high frequency, apply image. Make sure you have chosen the low frequency layer. To 1/20th subtract, OK, and choose linear light. So now we want to copy this texture into this place here. Okay, so we want to extend this waterfall. So I'm going to go to the clone stamp tool. I'm going to reset these options. Okay, so I don't want any of these to be, we don't have a reset option here, so I'm going to go to 100%. All right, and so check your clone source, because sometimes in the past if you used it, you will get the same settings. And now we make our brush size smaller, and we want to take maybe part of this here. So I'm going to option and click there. So that is my source, and now I simply paint in the area where I want the waterfall. Okay. Now notice that it didn't come white, it came brown. So I deliberately did that because if you look at your low frequency area, this white has to extend that side. We didn't do that, so we can do that now. So I'm putting the high frequency layer on just to show you. I'm working on the low frequency area. I'm going to choose the mixer brush, wet, same settings as before. I'm going to sample this white color from here, so make my brush small, and I'm going to choose the white color from here, option click. And once you've chosen that color, now you paint this area. Okay, so as you paint that area, if you choose a lighter area, it will become whiter. Okay. So that's how you create texture and color by using frequency of separation. Okay, so before and after. So like I said, you can manipulate any image and make it look really realistic, and you have the same texture, same light, everything is available, which normally would be very difficult to duplicate. So use frequency of separation to edit your pictures in a professional way. Practice using these pictures until you get the full hang of it, and then you'll be able to make fabulous and amazing pictures.